Hello students. In our earlier lecture we have discussed one of the form of the poetry. Now it is our turn to study another form of poetry, and that is epic. In in a strict form or strict sense of the term, epic is a long poem, mostly dealing with the gods, superhuman or supernatural beings, or heroic poem dealing with heroism of a central figure. So, heroic poem is applied to a work that meets certain criteria of the epic poem. So, these criteria that we are to see. Epic poem is a long verse narrative poem. It is dealing with the serious subject. It is told in the formal language or formal style, as well as the subject is treated through the language on an elevated style. It's high point scale. The subject is elevated by the language, and that is elevated style. Mostly it is centered on the heroic figures or quasi divine figures on whose actions depends the fate of a tribe, nation, or suppose for instance of a human race. We have finest example in John Milton's Paradise Lost. There is a standard distinction that we see in the traditional epic and now literary epics. Traditional epics are also folk epics, were written versions which had originally been oral poems about tribal and national hero during a warlike age. Among these are the Iliad, Odyssey, the Greek ascribed to Homer, Anglo-Saxon Beowulf, French Chanson de Roland, and Poema del Cid in the 12th century are epic examples. The German epic Nibelungenlied is also 13th century German epic poem. Later on, we have seen, in imitation to this, there are other literary epics that come up, composed by individual poetic craftsmen, in imitation with the traditional forms of epic. And on this line, we have Virgil's Latin poem Aeneid, which served as a model for the Milton's literary epic Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost, which in its turn will be described as become a kind of a romantic period, and we have seen that reflected in John Keats's Hyperion. Likewise, William Blake also wrote several prophetic books which are translated in mythic terms, biblical narrative. The epic was ranked by Aristotle as second only to the tragedy in his Poetics, and by many Renaissance critics as the highest of all the genres. Literary epic is certainly most poetic, most ambitious of poetic activity, because write an epic is not an easy task. It makes so many demands on the part of the poet. Poet's knowledge, invention, skill to sustain the subject to the end, scope, the grandeur, authority of the poem. So we have to think, the poet has to think about all these should be expanded to such an extent that to encompass the world of its day, the large portion of its learning. Despite numerous attempts in many languages over nearly 3,000 years, we possess not more but just a half a dozen of poems of individual greatness. So, literary epics are highly conventional compositions that are derived from innate certain features that we see in the literature. The hero is a great hero or a national hero. It's a great importance, cosmic importance. In Iliad, we have Achilles, warrior. Thetis, Virgil's Aeneas, we have is the son of goddess Aphrodite. And in Paradise Lost, Adam and Eve are the progenitors of the first human being of the human race. So, is both God and man. We have seen. The setting of the poem, if we think about, is made on the large scale, or it's a worldwide setting. Odysseus wanders in the Mediterranean basin, and in book 12 or 11, sorry, he descends into the underworld. The scope of the paradise lost is not the entire universe, for it takes place in heaven, on earth, in hell. The action involves extraordinary deeds in battle, such as Achilles feats the Trojan War, such as wanderings of Perseus on his way back to his homeland. In the face of opposition of by some of the gods, paradise lost includes the revolt in heaven by the rebel angels against God. We have this in these great actions the gods and supernatural beings take a very interesting and active part. Olympian gods in Homer, Jehovah Christ, angels in paradise lost. This machinery is playing in the sense for literary contrivances of the epic. An epic poem is a ceremonial performance, is narrated in a ceremonial style which is deliberately distanced from ordinary speech, proportioned to the grandeur and formality of the heroic subject. Hence, the Milton's grand style, his formal diction, elaborate and stylized syntax, which are in large part, modeled on Latin poetry. His sonorous list of names and wide-ranging allusions, his imitations of Homer, epic similes and epithets. There are also widely used epic conventions and formulas in the choice and ordering of episodes. Prominent among them, the features, as exemplified in Paradise Lost. The narrator begins by stating his argument or epic theme, invokes a muse, guiding spirit, to inspire his great work. So, invocation is one of the argument that is proposed. Paradise Lost begins or opens in the middle of all things. Saturn has been fallen, defeated, and he's organizing a meeting of all those fallen angels in the hell, pandemonium of the hell. So, these are some of the features are prescribed by the Paradise Lost. There are catalogues of some of the principal characters that are introduced in much more detail. Milton has brought these new additional features to the term or to the literary genre epic. These characters are often given set speeches. They reveal their diverse temperaments and moral attitudes, and that we see. The term epic is often applied by extension to narratives, which differ in many respects from this model but manifest the epic spirit and grandeur in the scale. We have seen Edmund Spenser also, to some extent, in the 16th century, wrote Fairy Queen, may be called as an epic type of poem. Large scale, wide ranging works of prose fiction may be compared with that of a epic type of work. Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, Herman Melville's Moby Dick brings us this Burgoyne's epic. Ulysses by James Joyce is an example of having epic scope. So these features that we see are part and the features of the epic poetry. So with these words, we need to think of the epic as a term and as one of the term that we are going to study in our syllabus. Thank you.